oil, wealth, religion. For decades, when someone thought of Saudi Arabia, these three words came to mind. A kingdom built on a sea of black gold, where hunting falcons cost more than luxury cars, and where ancient traditions dictate every aspect of life. But have you ever stopped to think that maybe this story is changing, and changing too fast for us to keep up? This is another episode of our series, What's Happening?, where we go beyond the headlines and show what is really changing, or trying to change, in countries that the world usually sees from the outside but rarely understands from the inside. And today we lift the veil on one of the most closed and contradictory kingdoms on the planet, a place where a trillion-dollar gamble promises to reinvent the country or bring it all crashing down. And most impressive of all of this is happening far from the Western spotlight. Today on Bello Mundo, we go beyond the desert and the clichés to show you what's happening in Saudi Arabia. Number 1. Vision 2030 and the man who runs everything. Saudi Arabia is undergoing its greatest transformation in decades, and to understand this, we must first meet the man behind the metamorphosis, Mohammed bin Salman, or as he is known around the world, MBS. At just 39 years old, he is the crown prince, and in practice, the real ruler of the country. His father, King Salman, is over 90 and has delegated almost all important decisions to his son, and the young tycoon is not messing around. Since 2016, he has been leading an ambitious plan called Vision 2030. The proposal is to reinvent Saudi Arabia and reduce its dependence on oil, which still accounts for more than 40% of the economy. He wants to transform the country into a global hub for technology, tourism, and innovation, all while trying to balance ancient traditions with changes that would have been unthinkable just 10 years ago. And to make this happen, he has concentrated power that few leaders in the world have. He is Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and head of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, also known as the PIF, the third largest in the world, with more than $1 trillion in assets. Under his leadership, the country has allowed women to drive, reopened movie theaters, legalized concerts, and invested heavily in sports and infrastructure. The country's image has changed, a lot, but not everything is rosy. Along with the reforms came a brutal crackdown on critics. Activists, influencers, and even members of the royal family have been arrested or disappeared. The most emblematic case is that of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered inside a Saudi consulate in Turkey. The UN blamed the state for the crime, something the government denies to this day. This is the paradox of the new Saudi Arabia. Rapid modernization on the outside, but strict control and heavy censorship on the inside. And at the center of it all, a single man holding the reins. Number 2. Neom, the city of the future. If you could build a city from scratch, ignoring all engineering constraints, money, and even common sense, what would you come up with? Well, I don't know about you, but for Saudi Arabia, the answer has a name. Neom, the most ambitious or absurd, depending on your point of view, project in modern history. Neom is more than a city. It is an entire territory, the size of Belgium, budgeted at $500 billion. At the center of it all is the Line, a linear metropolis 170 kilometers long, 500 meters high, and only 200 meters wide. The concept is surreal, a car-free city with all services accessible within a 5-minute walk, powered entirely by renewable energy, with vertical farms, and where residents will be able to travel from one end to the other in 20 minutes via high-speed underground trains. In promotional videos, we see robots delivering packages, flying taxis, and mirrored skyscrapers rising from the dunes. But behind the futuristic aesthetic the project faces a number of problems. Since 2023, there have been delays, cutbacks, executive changes, and replanning. In April 2025, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is financing the project, intervened to reduce costs and cancel parts of the construction. In addition to delays and cuts, serious allegations have emerged behind the scenes. Human Rights Watch has reported abuses against migrant workers, with reports of late wages, abusive working hours, and poor conditions. Local tribes have also been forced off their land, and a leader of the Huaytat tribe was even sentenced to death for resisting removal. With delivery promised for 2030, experts doubt that the project will be ready on time, or even completed at all. Others compare the project to the pyramids of Egypt, monuments to the vanity of their rulers, built at the expense of immense human suffering. But one thing is certain: if Neom is completed as planned, it will redefine the limits of what we consider possible in terms of engineering and urban planning. If it is abandoned, it could become the largest white elephant in modern history. Number 3. The obsession with sports and sportswashing. If you follow soccer, golf, Formula One, or almost any sport these days, you've probably noticed Saudi Arabia's growing presence at global sporting events. And it's no coincidence. This movement goes beyond a passion for sports. It's a strategy for image and power. The offensive began with soccer. The Saudi League went from irrelevant to a stage for global stars such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, and Benzema. Ronaldo alone receives around $200 million a year, a salary that exceeds the entire budgets of European clubs. The Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund also bought Newcastle United, establishing a presence in English soccer. In golf, they created LIV Golf, a parallel league that shook up the traditional circuit by offering huge prizes. In Formula One, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix became a fixture on the calendar until 2030, with million-dollar contracts. In esports, professional video game competitions with large audiences and live broadcasts, the advance has been even more aggressive. In 2024, the country hosted the Esports World Cup, with more than 60 million in prizes, and it will host the Esports Olympic Games in 2027. It recently bought the gaming division of Niantic, the American company that created Pokemon Go. But behind all this investment, accusations of sports washing are growing, using sport to clean up the regime's image and divert attention from human rights violations. Speaking of Niantic and Pokemon Go, this is another area in which the Saudis are investing: technology and gaming. Number 4. The gaming and technology empire. When we think of video game giants, countries like Japan, the United States, or South Korea come to mind, right? But Saudi Arabia is determined to change that scenario, and it is using its immense financial power to do so. In March 2025, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which is controlled by the government, paid $3.5 billion to acquire the gaming division of Niantic, the American company that created Pokemon Go, that augmented reality game where players hunt monsters on the streets using their cell phones. But this was not an isolated case. In 2023, the fund had already bought Scopely Inc., a mobile gaming giant known for the success of Monopoly Go, which has already generated more than $3 billion in revenue. The Saudi fund also has stakes in companies such as Japan's Nintendo, Electronic Arts, creator of FIFA and The Sims, Take-Two Interactive, Capcom, and even Sweden's Embracer Group. The plan is clear: to dominate the global gaming industry. Within the country, investment is also heavy. The National Strategy for Games and Esports was launched with the goal of creating 250 local studios and generating 100,000 jobs by 2030. And it doesn't stop there. In Riyadh, the Saudi capital, New Murabba is being built, a mega innovation district that is expected to house one of the largest game development centers in the world. In addition, the country has announced the Saudi Tech Hub, an $8 billion program to attract giants such as Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, and even artificial intelligence companies such as OpenAI and Anthropic. But the challenge now is different. How to become an innovation hub in a country that still censors the internet and scares away some of the world's top talent. That is the equation the Saudis need to solve. Number 5. Geopolitical tensions and the new Middle East. While investing billions in mega projects and futuristic dreams, Saudi Arabia is also completely rewriting its role on the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East, one of the most unstable and strategic regions on the planet. For decades, the kingdom was the United States' main ally in the region and a declared rival of neighboring Shiite-majority Iran. But that scenario is changing. In March 2023, with China's mediation, Saudi Arabia and Iran resumed diplomatic relations after 7 years of rupture. The agreement surprised the world, not only because it united former enemies, but because it showed that Beijing, not Washington, is now the mediator of peace in the Middle East. Prince Mohammed bin Salman has adopted an increasingly independent stance. When the United States asked the Saudis to increase oil production to curb global inflation, they were ignored. In the war in Ukraine, the kingdom maintained a calculated silence without directly condemning Russia. Another symbolic move is the rapprochement with Israel. Although talks have cooled with the worsening conflict in the Gaza Strip, many analysts believe that normalization of relations is only a matter of time. In Yemen, where Saudi Arabia led a military intervention in 2015, it is now seeking a diplomatic solution. In Sudan, it is trying to act as a mediator. Even with Syria, which until recently was led by the controversial regime of Bashar al-Assad, the kingdom has re-established ties. This pragmatic stance, called by some the MBS doctrine, bets on balance between powers such as the United States, China, and Russia, without fully aligning itself with any one of them. It is a bold move. This new position is not without risks. The region remains a powder keg with latent conflicts that could explode at any moment. Internally, closer ties with Israel or Iran could generate resistance in different segments of Saudi society, which is traditionally conservative. The big question now is whether Saudi Arabia will be able to maintain this difficult balance, modernizing without giving up its traditions, getting closer to old enemies without alienating historic allies, and projecting global influence without destabilizing its own region. Whether it will be able to balance all these plates is anyone's guess. But one thing is certain. Saudi Arabia is a central figure in the new Middle East, shaping the region's future, for better or for worse. Number 6. Luxury desert tourism. Imagine spending your vacation in a country that until recently was one of the most closed in the world, where foreign tourists were rare and had to follow strict rules. Well, that reality is changing at an impressive speed, and Saudi Arabia is determined to become the new dream destination for luxury travelers. In 2019, the country launched an electronic visa system for tourists from 49 countries, officially opening its doors to the world. The goal? To welcome 100 million visitors per year by 2030. A huge leap, considering that the country barely received any non-religious tourists before that. To achieve this goal, the Saudis are betting on luxury resorts, untouched nature, and exclusive experiences. On the Red Sea coast, the Red Sea Project is under construction, an archipelago with 90 islands, 5-star hotels, and promises of high-end eco-tourism. Some units have been operating since the end of 2024, with brands such as Saint Regis and Six Senses. Further north is Amala, a resort focused on wellness and art, with a private airport and a budget of $20 billion. The idea is to be the Riviera of the Middle East. And for those who like history, there is Alula, an archaeological region with more than 7,000 years of civilizations. There is Hegra, a city carved into stone by the Nabateans, the same people who built Petra in Jordan. Even Riyadh, the country's capital, has joined the trend. With the Riyadh Season Festival, the city attracted more than 15 million visitors in 2024, with international concerts, theme parks, and sporting events. Social rules have also changed. Foreign women no longer need to cover their hair, luxury hotels serve alcohol in exclusive areas, and even unmarried couples can stay together. There is still a long way to go, but the Saudi desert is transforming and wants to become a showcase for the world. But that's not the only radical change. Number 7. The Women's Revolution. For a long time, the image the world had of Saudi women was that of someone invisible, covered from head to toe, forbidden to drive, go out alone, or work without permission from a male family member. But that image is changing, and faster than many people imagined. In 2018, Saudi Arabia finally allowed women to drive. It was the last country in the world to do so. Since then, a series of reforms has begun to reshape the role of women in the country, in one of the most remarkable social movements in Saudi history. The old system of male guardianship, known as the guardian system, is being partially dismantled. Women over the age of 21 can now obtain a passport, travel alone, register for marriage or divorce, and even start a business without permission from a male relative. Gender segregation in cafes and restaurants is also no longer mandatory. In the labor market, the leap is visible. Female participation rose from 17% in 2017 to 36% in 2024. Today, there are women working in areas such as public safety, tourism, aviation, and even as app drivers. In universities, they are already in the majority, more than half of all students. In professions such as law and medicine, growth is rapid, and names such as Rima bint Bandar al Saud, the first woman to represent the country as ambassador to the United States, or Asil al-Hamad, a Saudi pioneer in motor racing, have become symbols of this new phase. And no, we're not saying that everything is great, because it would be naive to think that all barriers have fallen. Despite the reforms, Saudi society remains deeply conservative. Many families still impose restrictions on their daughters and wives, regardless of what the law allows. The family code itself maintains provisions that put women at a disadvantage in matters of marriage, divorce, and child custody. There is still a long way to go, but at least the first steps have been taken. Number 8. Future. A question that begs to be asked: where is Saudi Arabia headed? What is the future of this nation? The answer is somewhat complex. On the one hand, the country is investing heavily in innovation, building futuristic cities in the middle of the desert, hosting international concerts, and betting on games and sports to attract the world. On the other hand, it continues to arrest activists, censor uncomfortable voices, and keep power concentrated in the hands of the monarchy. The future of the kingdom revolves around one thing: the so-called Vision 2030, the project of the visionary prince. If this plan works and the country manages to reduce its dependence on oil, it could very well become a modern powerhouse, in its own way, of course. A kind of Singapore of the Gulf, rich, controlled, and with everything working. Now, if it goes wrong, the bill could be steep, because the people are no longer the same. 7 out of 10 Saudis are under the age of 30. This is a generation that grew up with the internet, TikTok, and Cristiano Ronaldo playing in the local league. People who are starting to travel, study abroad, and see the world, and who may not be so willing to give up the small freedoms they have begun to enjoy. The most likely scenario? A middle ground. The government will continue to modernize what is good for the economy, tourism, technology, entertainment, but will hold tight to political control. It will open the window but keep the safe locked, and we here at Bello Mundo will continue to follow the story and report back with any new developments. After seeing the contradictions, excesses, and oddities of the real Saudi Arabia, the question remains, does this image match what you imagined, or did it take you by surprise? What did you think of this other side of the desert kingdom? Was there anything that shocked you or anything that changed your view of Saudi Arabia? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into Saudi contradictions, leave a like, share it with those who still think that everything there is just oil and camels, and of course, subscribe here at Bello Mundo so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you very much for joining us. See you at the next stop.